And welcome back to the Employment Hour. I'm your host, Paul KUTYLO, and this is Jeff Williams on my one side here. Jeff, good to see you again.
Hi, Paul.
And MOHAMMED FAHEEM is here, and we're just going to have kind of
Paul.
around the desk discussion about various issues and whatever of employment of interest to employers and employees. Now, Jeff, we wanted to focus on you a little bit about the 50s generation. And what are their challenges now to getting reemployed or getting a different job and that kind of thing?
Now, before we get into the 50s generation, let me just point out that Jeff just hit 50.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
No.
that gear just turned. So
That's only because there's some question about the birth certificate.
But that brings up an issue, too, that I feel very strongly about, and that is, how old are you? How old are you? I've met people in their 20s that were so set in their ways and so dead in a way that they may as well have been 95. Okay, and I've met people that were 95 that were still willing to give it a go, that still had fire in the oven and really still had enthusiasm.
Well, on that topic, Paul, I mean, I was just a couple of days back. I was listening to a very interesting conversation on the radio that today's 60s are actually, people are healthy enough to be where they were like when they were in their 40s. So some of the insurance companies are actually changing their actuarial tables to reflect the changes. People are more healthy, they are living longer lives. So yeah, I mean, the paradigm is changing. So by that, by that measure, Jeff is 35.
That's right.
Well, let's get into
That's absolutely true. I see you as a very young man in that kind of thing. But
let's get into the 50s situation there.
One of the contrasts I think you're seeing today happened in my own family. My father worked for the federal government for most of his career, and when he was 58, he had a chance, by combining his military time with government time, he had a chance to retire at a relatively nice pension level. And I remember all of his children were together, there was 4 of us. We were all together with my dad about the same time, and he said, after I leave this job next month, I'm not going to work at anything I don't want to for the rest of my life. And I will have to tell you that he did a really good job until he was 85 and passed away at 85. He really didn't. This was the mentality of that, the greatest generation ever, that, as Tom Brokaw talks about. Boomers have a very different perspective here. The key, I think, to people over 50 in the current generation is they want to be players. They want to continue to be players unless there's some health impediment to prevent them from doing that. And what we're seeing right now is there's really kind of 3 categories that 50-plussers, 50 to 62-year-olds, are kind of falling into as far as life mission. There's about, I don't know what the approximate percentages are here, but let's say the majority of this group are people who have some reasonably good financial security for retirement. Typically, these are people who have a defined benefit pension, and they have some money put aside in a 401k. That, unfortunately, has now declined to the point where fewer than 40% of corporate employees are eligible for defined benefit pensions, and even where they are.
Explain the defined benefits.
The defined benefit pension is the pension of old where you are paid a certain amount of money per month as long as you live. It's guaranteed. My wife retired from Cook County about 5 years ago. She has a defined benefit. It's based on a percentage of the last 5 years of your employment. They use not all 5, it's the high 3 of your last 5. And in most employers, about the max you can get is 80%. Now, there are some exceptions to this. So my wife has a defined benefit pension that says you will get this number of thousands of dollars a month as long as you live. And as a matter of fact, because we paid extra over the years, even if my wife were to pass away, I get some of it still, a small percentage of it. So that's defined benefit.
Jeff, what would be your advice to somebody who is headed towards the retirement age, or who's been offered an early retirement package? What would be your advice to somebody like that? Start their own business, look for another job? I mean, what do you think is going to be the most productive use of their time?
Well, let's not talk about productive so much, because that's really kind of a corporate concept more than a life concept.
Okay.
Let's talk about getting centered on your passion again.
Okay.
The reality is that many of us had to live to work for 25 or 30 years. We had family responsibilities, we had obligations, And that doesn't say that we didn't enjoy parts of our job. I had 9 different jobs in my corporate career, and I can tell you that I really only dug about 3 of them. The other 6 were okay, I learned something new, I got paid well, whatever. That's true of a lot of people. They get to be 55, 58 years old, and they say, you know, I haven't done a thing that's work-related in 15 years I really enjoy doing. So I think the first thing you need to do when you have the opportunity to either take traditional retirement in a defined benefit plan or some other type of early retirement scheme is you've got to sit down, perhaps with the help of a coach.
Okay. Do you coach people in that respect? I mean, if they need help, can people come to you and find you? I know that you have a website, so
I'm more specialized than that.
Okay.
As I said, there's really kind of 3 categories of 50-plus people. There's the kind that can pretty much retire after, say, 57 or 58 in an orderly fashion, and they don't really have to work again if they don't want to.
Okay.
The second category are people who can retire, say, before 62, but they're still going to have to bring in some income for a while. Okay. Then you got the third category that are so bad off financially that they may have to work till they're 70. Those are really the way it breaks down into those 3 groups. And I can't tell you exactly what percentages. But of the first 2 groups particularly, the ones where they're well off and can retire and the ones that are reasonably well off, those are where we get most of our people for self-employment.
Okay.
We're kind of a subset of that whole retirement planning movement.
Okay. Now when you say that they come to you, are they coming to plan out a business? Is that what you're helping them with defining their path and helping them with the steps into attaining that goal that they are setting up? Or do you help with defining the goal also?
Well, it varies. I get people ranging all the way from they've just started getting some kind of warm feelings about being an entrepreneur, all the way to people who are halfway through their business plan.
Okay.
But they don't know how to implement it. I mean, I get a whole spectrum, which is why this job is so much fun. I would say that from my experience in doing this for 18 years, virtually everybody who comes to me has some inkling in their subconscious somewhere that they want to do something independent.
Now, how important is it to put that feeling down on paper and quantify that and, put goals and goalposts? In other words, how important is it to have a business plan in order to succeed?
I think it's very important. But what I recommend my clients do first is what I call a life plan.
Okay.
Which is, where do you want to be in the next 3 years as far as health, as far as family relationships, financially, religious. I'll just give you a quick example of how this worked in my life. When I decided to leave the corporate world 19 years ago to become self-employed, I did like a little life plan for myself. And one of the things that was really important to me at that point in my life is I was in the process of seriously converting a conversion from being a Presbyterian to being a Catholic. I had married a Catholic woman, and fortunately we had a very contemporary priest who didn't insist that we both be Catholic, but I had every expectation of doing it. Well, here I was, my first year in business, extremely busy, particularly at night. And in order to formally transfer into the Catholic faith, you have to go through a program called RCIA. And it's a number of weeks at night. Well, my life plan had been set out in such a way that I not only had financial goals, but I had a goal that, within this 6-month period, I want to be prepared to formally be welcomed into the Catholic faith. And that's why I talk about a life plan. Too many people come to me and they want to get into the marketing strategy immediately. They want to get into the fundraising. To me, that's premature.
Okay.
Let's look at the life plan first. Because what we're trying to do is convert you from a life experience where you're living to work to where you're working to live. Work is part of your life. Now, it doesn't mean you don't work hard. I work about 50 hours a week. But I kind of do it my own schedule. I still take about a month's worth of vacation a year.
You have to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful at it no matter what. I mean, you're going to have health problems. You may make a lot of money, but you'll end up with high blood pressure.
That's
and
right.
All of those things.
Very important, and that would put people into another category of old age, the people that are basically convalescing from medical situations, and they're kind of always kind of sick. And you know, you're talking more about more active type of seniors that still have something to give and still want to do something with themselves and with their lives. And the word of passion too that you mentioned earlier. It's important to get in touch with things that you're passionate about, that you can build a business on.
Right. I mean, people love enthusiasm. People will buy from people who are enthusiastic, even if you're not quite as knowledgeable as another salesperson. If you're more enthusiastic, now obviously you don't want to be scamming people with no knowledge at all, but enthusiasm is a key. And a lot of people, by the time they get in their mid-50s, they're burnt out from the corporate world. They're not enthusiastic at all.
Right.
About anything work-related. And this is why it is doubly difficult if you are downsized in your 50s. You're already not enthusiastic. And now you're in a stressful interviewing situation where you have to come across as, I will be your most enthusiastic, loyal employee if you hire me. But you're already almost biologically predisposed not to feel that way.
Right.
It's a real tough challenge.
And, I think we can talk a little bit about these aspects in the next segments about, you know, getting a job, finding a job, writing resumes, interviewing, and how do you sell yourself to an employer, especially when you are coming up to that middle age.
And it's like you're saying, it's very, very important to avoid kind of hardened attitudes or chips on your shoulder, and feel sort of like the victim of society, or the victim of being a layoff or that kind of thing, to really market yourself correctly to your new employer.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it never pays to come across as a victim. That's true in personal life, and it's true in the business world too. There are some biases out there. I mean, I've been seeing these represented when I see surveys of HR directors. The average age of an HR director is probably late 40s today, which, you know, that's fairly close to the 50s, but still there's some age difference. And one of the things that we're hearing from HR directors is they're reluctant to take a chance on a 50-plus person because they don't think that they will learn the new technology fast enough. I was just talking to a client the other day who went through a number of job interviews before he decided to go full-time on the entrepreneurial path. And they said to this client, they said, well, we don't think you're keeping up with the latest technology because you didn't work with it in your last couple jobs.
Right.
And he said, but I do. I subscribe to 2 specialty newsletters. I am in a networking group that talks about this technology all the time. It was really difficult for him to get this across to the HR director at age 57 that he was still tuned in. Because, you know, they could take a 30-year-old today and say, listen, I want you to learn everything about podcasting in the next 24 hours. And they'll learn it. I mean, that's what they consider to be responsiveness today.
Right.
So what's tough is you have to go into a job interview when you're in your 50s. You have to be quietly confident. You have to play to your strengths. And the strength is you've learned a heck of a lot in 25 or 30 years. And you got to let it play out.
And you've got those skills that are transferable that you can bring to any job situation. I mean, transferable skills are more and more important to an employer also. There's a feeling out there that, okay, I'm over 50, I'm too old, I can't find a job. I mean, I had a couple of people come into my office the other day, and they were just so down and out, and I gave them your example. I said, you know, look at Paul. I mean, he goes and finds a good job, and he could do it because the attitude was there. And you have the skills that you can translate to any job situation. Most important, transferable skills. And then older people are more reliable compared to, you know, kids out of college who might want to leave early, take weekends off. And I'm seeing this trend also, Jeff, that employers are realizing this now, that an older person who is willing to learn new things, not somebody who's set in their ways, that, you know, if I can do only AR 400 as an accountant, I don't want to learn Peachtree, for example.
Right.
So if you're willing to put that out, that I'm willing to learn, and you can prove that, yeah, you can still land yourself a job.
A couple of things from my thing, and we're heading down to a break here, from my situation. One of them that helped me was something that one of your employment advisors said: keep away from a hardened attitude and don't have that chip on your shoulder. So when I went out looking for a job, that helped me tremendously because it put me in the category of the people, the few that didn't. Another thing was I found an employer that looked at me and said, you know, I've looked at 3 or 4 different other people that were younger, right out of school, and I've had it. I'm not going to retrain people. You come here with a lot of experience, and I want that experience. So I got lucky in that way, but I think those kinds of opportunities, like you're saying, employers are looking up to that, and they are beginning to see that they need that kind of thing. We have to go to a break now. There's a lot more information on our website, www.employmenthour.com. I keep mentioning that because it really is that good. There's all kinds of information. You can check out this and other topics of interest to employers and employees there. We'll be back in a moment.